When you are teaching, do you ever feel like this guy with the applause? You're putting on a show, you're putting on a big performance, and should you be paid more for putting on a better performance? Hello, my name is Jesse Sierra. We're talking about teacher performance pay. Where did it come from? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? Let's talk about that. Teacher performance. Now, it started even before the mid-1800s, but in the mid-1800s, British teachers and schools were paid on the basis of student examinations. This lasted about 30 years because it became a system of cheating and cramming, and public opposition grew, and the system was just abolished, okay? But in the US, in the 19-teens, the 1900s, early 1900s, 48% of US schools described their payment plan as merit-based. This is in 1918, but according to Harry Phillips in The Purposeful Argument, merit-based meant white men got paid more. Okay, so we're really looking at merit-based starting in the 1960s with performance contracting, but that ended in cheating and failure and scandals, and so it didn't start up again until the 1980s, and again we're looking at same old negative results as before. Lots of experiments but little staying power. In the 2005 we have Denver coming up with it's the first of its kind because it was district-wide. It wasn't just a pilot program, and this was called ProComp. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. The Wing Institute put together this list of studies. There have been lots of studies, lots of programs, lots of pilot programs, but this is the list of studies that have been done actually that showed numbers that we can actually really look at, really pretty good studies. Okay, so the first one is considered an achievement in Arkansas from 2004 to 2007. There were 3 schools, but they were academically challenged schools, and I think that's something that you really have to look at, okay? The way they measured success was the Iowa Test of Basic Skills. If the student did better on that test, the teacher would get an incentive for that student. And you can see here the incentive plan. It was a simple plan. That's what makes this good to look at. Simple plan, and the scores went up. But schools were not randomly chosen. We have to think about that. Schools were not randomly chosen. We're looking at academically challenged schools. If their test scores are already rock bottom, they can only stand to go up. So maybe the results are skewed a little bit. Plus, it's a relatively small sample size of school. Just 3 schools. Okay, we're looking also at Texas. This is a much bigger program. 50% of the state's public school population participated in the DATE program. The problem is it varies by district. Each district locally, okay, it's locally designed incentive plan, so we don't know what the incentives are. We don't know what performance, what's the definition of performance. Here, Arkansas defined performance as they do better on the test. Here, it could be different. And then when you look at Denver, it's different again. This is what I have a graph here that shows what their payment plan, what their performance was, what's the definition of performance. Okay, well, you earn a graduate degree, you get $3,000, and you can just look at the amount of money you get for each of these things, and only one of these things is test scores. This was in 2005. The reason it was a big deal because it was district-wide. It was not just a pilot program like in Arkansas. Inconclusive impact. Okay, the scores went up, scores saw no change. It was confusing for teachers because their salaries were going up and down and they didn't even know why. And it led to a teacher strike in 2018. And here's a little bit of video for that. And can't even hear it.
Activism that's been spreading around the country over the past couple. Wave of teacher strikes and activism that's been spreading around the country over the past couple of years keeps growing. Today's strike in Denver is especially focused on wages and compensation. But this labor action touches on some larger issues surrounding education, funding, and academic performance nationally. Amna Nawaz picks up the story there.
Teachers hit the picket line in Denver today for the first time since 1994. Schools were open today and partially staffed by substitutes, but the walkout and standoff over pay affected some 70,000 students. This was the scene in one high school this morning as the strike got underway. Much of the fight comes down to a pay system known as ProComp that involves a complicated merit and bonus system. Teachers say it's vastly outdated for all kinds of reasons. Madeline Will of our partner, Education Week, is here to help fill in the picture. Welcome to the NewsHour.
Thank you for having me.
So the system ProComp, a lot of other places looked to Denver as an example and tried to put in their own systems of linking performance and pay. Did it have an impact? Did it lead to other places putting into place the same system?
So it did. There was a federal grant program where this idea of performance pay was at the heart of it. Other school districts, even District of Columbia, started implementing this similar model.
And do we know if it caught on? Is that still a trend that we're seeing in education these days?
It's less of a trend these days. We have been tracking governors who have included teacher pay proposals in their state addresses, and only one is offer the idea of a merit pay. The rest are just offering across the board pay raises. That seems to be more popular.
Across the board pay raises, hey, I'll sign me up for that. I don't mind that. Now we're looking here at New York. They tried a merit pay system. Financial rewards were $3,000 per United Federation of Teachers member. This was a program initiated in high need schools. Okay, determined. The annual performance targets were determined in part by student growth. Okay, so here we saw no improvement in this program. Okay, actually in elementary school, middle school, and K through 8, scores actually went down, and it's not statistically significant, so it's not mentioned very much in the report. It didn't affect school progress reports. It didn't affect teachers' reported attitudes. It was just an all-out wash. And this is according to the RAND Education and Labor. Nashville, they tried their own. Now what they did was interesting. Okay, they had financial bonuses of $5,000, $10,000, and $15,000. There were 296 middle school math teachers that volunteered. Half of them were chosen to be in the treatment group. So they're the ones that actually participated in the bonus program. The other half were placed in a control group. And they just wanted to see which scores would go up. Math scores did go up. In both groups though. Math scores went up in the treatment group, but also in the control group. So that ends up being no significant effect. Okay, no significant effect. Last one I'll talk about is is the Teacher Incentive Fund. You'll see headlines like benefits of merit pay, improve student performance, performance bonuses for teacher boost test scores a bit. But when they say a bit, this is what we're talking about. Very, very, very minuscule results. What we're looking at here, what they did, this is even more interesting. What they did here was, this is the treatment group, so this is the one that got the bonuses. Okay, they got pretty big bonuses. Okay, these are kind of your average bonuses in the 3,000s and the 4,000s, as high as in the 8,000s and even 9,000s. Whereas the control group still got a bonus, which was cool for them. They got a bonus and they didn't really have to participate in the program. They got a bonus. But it was just 1% of their salary. So if they were making $40,000, that was $400 extra. And that's good for not even really being in the program. But anyway, they're a control group. They got, $400, $500 extra every year. And that was nice for them. But you saw very little gains. And I think that's something we have to look at. In a lot of these programs, there's very little gains that are seen. And there's millions, possibly billions of dollars being spent on teacher incentive programs, and we're seeing very little gains, whereas maybe an across-the-board pay raise might be better for teacher retention, which would create more solid, a lot more solid state for your schools. That aside, we've got we've got to look at the standardized testing, because in all of these cases, the way they measure student success is with a standardized test. So we got to look at the benchmarks. We have to look at, we have to look at standardized testing and realize that there are some good things. It does create benchmarks for parents and teachers. You can look at the student and see how they're doing compared to other students in their class or in their district in the country. You can identify problem areas for that student. You can have guidelines for curriculum, and it's objective grading. It's objective grading. However, there are things to consider. Multiple intelligences is one thing. Who knew that Homer can do donut physics? I mean, this is amazing, but that's not going to be tested it's not going to be shown in a test. There's no test out there that was going to show that I learned how to play French horn in the 7th grade. There's no test out there that could see that, Billy's a good actor and that Sally can write plays. We also have to consider differentiation, okay? We preach differentiation, yet when it comes down to teacher pay, we're going to link it to a test, one test. But we've been talking about differentiation this whole entire time, but you're going to link it to a test? Okay. So obviously, there's something to consider there. One day, one test, okay? All this pressure being put on poor little student because of one day and one test. And some students are just bad test takers. I know I was, maybe you were too. And we also have to consider, there's one thing we may have to consider is teacher referrals. You have all these students that are in your class because the parent wanted them in your class. That might affect results. So the results are in. We have several different programs, but we're still not sure if it really works. Okay, we're just not sure. Maybe you can look at Texas and say, okay, the test results went up, but there was just so many variables that how can you say that the test scores went up because of one thing or another? The idea has been around since even before the 1800s. Several programs have been developed. A few have worked, several haven't. Many of the studies are not scientific. There's more to consider than just raising a test score. If you start teaching to the test, what's going to start happening? Probably negative results if that's all you're doing is just teaching to the test. So I want to leave you with this. You're a good teacher. You keep doing what you do. You can pay a teacher to teach, but you cannot pay a teacher to care. Thank you.